The morning started like any other Tuesday for Commander Jake Morrison. He was drinking coffee on the bridge of the Defiant when the alarms began screaming. Every screen lit up at once, with red warnings. Something massive had just appeared near Mars. Jake dropped his coffee cup and ran to the main display. His hands shook as he zoomed in on the readings. Ships. Huge ships. 23 of them. Each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. They hung in space like dark mountains, blocking out the stars behind them. "Get me Earth Command right now," Jake said. His voice was calm, but his heart was racing. This was it. The moment humanity had wondered about for centuries. We are not alone. The alien message came through 15 minutes later. The translation was perfect, which scared Jake even more. They had studied us. They knew our language. They probably knew everything about us. "People of Earth," the voice said. It sounded strange, like metal scraping on metal. "We are the Valorian Empire. We have watched your world. You are now part of our empire. Put down your weapons. Your leaders will meet with us. You have 12 hours. Jake looked at his crew. Lieutenant Kate Barnes was staring at the screen with her mouth open. Pilot Danny Rogers was gripping his controls so hard his knuckles were white. Engineer Tony Martinez had stopped working and was just standing there, frozen. "What do we do, sir?" Kate asked. Jake thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was 7 years old. He thought about his wife, his parents, his friends. He thought about every human being on the planet below. Then he thought about the tone in that alien voice. They weren't asking. They were telling. "We tell them no," Jake said. Back on Earth, the United Earth Council met in an underground bunker in Geneva. The room was full of leaders from every nation. Admiral Lisa Chen stood at the front, showing them the tactical display. The news was bad. Really bad. "They have 23 capital ships," Lisa explained. "Each one could destroy our entire fleet by itself. We have 42 ships total. Most of them are old. Some were built 30 years ago. In a straight fight, we lose. Badly." President Angela Hart of the North American Union spoke up. "What are our options?" "Reuse. We surrender or we fight," Lisa said simply. "Those are the only two choices. If we fight, how long can we last?" asked Premier Chen Wei of the Asian Coalition. Lisa looked down at her notes. She had run the numbers 100 times. Maybe 3 days. Maybe a week if we're lucky. But we'll lose. The math doesn't lie. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. Fighting meant death. Lots of death. Cities destroyed. Millions killed. Maybe billions. The smart choice was obvious. Chancellor Greg Palmer of the European Federation cleared his throat. "I have a question for everyone here. Can we live under their rule? Can we tell our children that we gave up without trying? Can we look at ourselves in the mirror, knowing we didn't even fight back?" More silence. Then Angela stood up. "My grandfather fought in World War III. He told me something I never forgot. He said that some things are worse than dying. Living on your knees is one of them." One by one, the leaders voted. The decision was unanimous. Earth would fight. When the Valorian commander Zethron received Earth's response, he was confused. The message was just one word. "No." He called his second officer. "Did we translate this correctly?" "Yes, Commander." "They refuse, but they must understand their situation. Show them our fleet. Show them our weapons. Make them understand." "We did, Commander. They understand. They still refuse." Zethron had conquered 47 different worlds. Some fought back at first, but they always surrendered when they saw the Valorian fleet. It was logical. It was sensible. Why die when you could live? "Perhaps they don't believe we'll actually attack," Zethron said. "Send the subjugation fleet. Destroy one of their orbital stations. Something small. They'll see we're serious." The Valorians moved forward. Their ships were beautiful and terrifying. They had energy shields that could stop anything humans could throw at them. They had weapons that could burn through a battleship in seconds. They had fought and won 1,000 battles across the galaxy. But they had never fought humans before. Jake watched the Valorian fleet approach. His ship was part of the first defensive line. 12 human ships against 5 Valorian cruisers. The math was clear. They were going to die. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, came the voice over the radio. I won't lie to you. We're outgunned. We're probably going to lose. But we're going to make them remember us. We're going to make them pay for every inch. Make every shot count. Make every second count. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. Earth is counting on us. Our families are counting on us. Don't let them down. Kate looked over at Jake. Are you scared, sir? Terrified. Jake admitted. But that doesn't matter. What matters is what we do next. The Valorian ships opened fire first. Beams of pure energy cut through space. The human ship Liberty exploded in a ball of fire. Gone in 3 seconds. 2,200 people dead just like that. Then the human ships fired back. Missiles streaked toward the Valorian vessels. Most were destroyed by the alien shields, but some got through. One Valorian cruiser shuddered as explosions rippled across its hull. They can be hurt, Danny said, his voice full of surprise and hope. Then let's hurt them more, Jake replied. All power to weapons. Head straight for that cruiser. We're going to ram it. Sir, that will destroy us, Kate protested. I know, Jake said. But it will destroy them too. The Defiant turned and accelerated at full speed toward the Valorian cruiser. Alarms blared. The crew held onto their stations. Some prayed. Some cried. Some just gritted their teeth and did their jobs. The Valorians saw the human Shitha battle lasted 16 hours. 16 hours of constant fighting. Ships exploding. People dying. Space filled with debris and bodies. By the time it was over, 26 human ships were destroyed. But the Valorians had lost 8 of their mighty cruisers. 8 ships that were supposed to be unbeatable. Commander Zethron stared at his tactical display in disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. The humans should have broken after the first hour. They should have retreated. They should have begged for mercy. Instead, they fought harder. He watched the replay of one battle. A small human destroyer was badly damaged. Its shields were down. Its weapons were barely working. Any sane commander would have retreated. Instead, the human ship turned and rammed directly into a Valorian cruiser at full speed. Both ships were destroyed instantly. Why would they do that? Zethron asked his tactical officer. Why throw away their lives? I don't know, Commander. It makes no strategic sense. But it wasn't just one ship. Again and again, human vessels did the impossible. When they ran out of missiles, they used their ships as weapons. When engines failed, they drifted close and detonated their reactors. When life support failed, crews in spacesuits jumped out and tried to board Valorian ships with nothing but cutting tools and grenades. Zethron had never seen anything like it. In Valorian culture, warriors fought with honor and intelligence. There were rules. When a battle was clearly lost, you retreated to fight another day. It was logical. It preserved lives and ships for future battles. Humans didn't seem to understand this concept. They fought like every battle was their last. Like they had already accepted death and were just trying to take as many enemies with them as possible. Danny Rogers was one of the pilots who survived that first battle. His fighter had been hit 3 times. His cockpit was filled with smoke. Half his controls didn't work. He should have ejected and hoped for rescue. Instead, he saw a damaged Valorian shield generator on one of their big ships. It was barely protected. If someone could hit it just right, the whole shield would collapse. Then the big human battleships could hurt that cruiser. Danny didn't think about his wife back on Earth. He didn't think about his parents or his friends. He just thought about that shield generator and what would happen if he could destroy it. He aimed his fighter and pushed the throttle to maximum. The Valorians saw him coming and fired everything they had. Danny's fighter was hit twice more. Alarms screamed. Fire spread through the cockpit, but he kept going. The impact destroyed the shield generator and Danny's fighter. The Valorian cruiser's shields flickered and died. 3 human battleships immediately opened fire. The cruiser exploded 10 minutes later. Danny's sacrifice saved 200 human lives. He never knew it. He died instantly in the collision. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. Humanity was fighting back. Yes, we were losing ships. Yes, people were dying. But we were hurting them too. The mighty Valorian Empire was bleeding. Captain Tony Martinez commanded a small patrol ship called the Vigilant. His ship was too old and slow to join the main battle. Instead, he was ordered to protect Earth's orbital stations. It seemed like an easy job. The Valorians were focused on the military ships. Then 3 Valorian fighters broke through the defensive line. They were heading straight for Medical Station 7. 3,000 sick and injured people were on that station. Doctors, nurses, patients, civilians, defenseless. Tony had 2 choices. He could run. His ship was no match for 3 Valorian fighters, or he could try to stop them. "All crew, this is the captain," Tony said over the intercom. "I'm going to intercept those fighters. I know the odds aren't good. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the escape pods can do so now. I won't think less of you." Nobody left their stations. Engineer Pete Collins actually laughed. "Captain, if you think we're going to miss this fight, you're crazy. Let's go protect our people." The Vigilant positioned itself between the Valorian fighters and the medical station. It was like a mouse challenging 3 cats. The Valorians probably didn't even see the old patrol ship as a real threat. Tony proved them wrong. The Vigilant fired everything it had. Missiles, lasers, even the old projectile cannons that nobody thought worked anymore. The first Valorian fighter exploded. The second one took damage and had to break off. The third one fired back. The Vigilant was hit hard. The engine exploded. Life support failed. Half the crew died in seconds. Tony was thrown against his console. Blood ran down his face. His right arm was broken. But the Valorian fighter was damaged too and retreating. Medical Station 7 was safe. Tony smiled as he lost consciousness. His crew had done their job. Zethron called an emergency meeting with his commanders. They gathered in the war room of his flagship. Everyone looked worried. This was supposed to be an easy conquest. Now, they had lost 8 ships and over 15,000 Valorian warriors. "We need to increase our forces," said Commander Velthar. "Bring in the Second Fleet. Overwhelm them with numbers." "No," Zethron said. "We need to understand what we're fighting. These humans aren't like any species we've encountered. They fight without logic, without reason. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They're primitives," Velthar argued. "They're desperate. Once we destroy their homeworld's defenses, they'll surrender." Zethron wasn't so sure. He had been studying human history during the battle. What he found disturbed him. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire existence. Wars that lasted years. Wars that killed millions. Wars fought with nuclear weapons that poisoned their own planet. And they never stopped. Even after the worst wars, they rebuilt and fought again. They had a phrase: never give up, never surrender. It wasn't just something they said. It was something they believed with every fiber of their being. "Send for the xenopsychologist," Zethron ordered. "I want to know what makes these creatures tick, and I want to know how to make them stop fighting." On Earth, Lisa Chen was promoted to Fleet Admiral. Most of the old admirals were dead. She was now in charge of Earth's entire military. It was a responsibility she never wanted. She stood in the command center, looking at the tactical display. The Valorians had pulled back to regroup. It was a temporary break. They would attack again soon. and Earth had lost more than half its fleet in the first battle. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked. 16 operational, ma'am," replied her aide, Lieutenant Gary Walsh. "Another 6 that might be repaired in time. We have maybe 48 hours before they attack again." "Then we have 48 hours to get ready," Lisa said. "I want every weapon we have moved into orbit. Every missile. Every mine. Every old satellite with explosives strapped to it. If they want Earth, they're going to have to come through hell to get it." Gary hesitated. "Ma'am, even with everything we have, the math says we can't win." 6 months passed. 6 long months of constant war. The Valorians now controlled Mars and most of the outer colonies. They had destroyed 2/3 of Earth's space fleet. By every logical measure, the war should have been over. Earth should have surrendered. Instead, the fighting got worse. Colonel Nick Henderson crouched behind a pile of rubble on Mars. His uniform was torn and dirty. He hadn't showered in 3 weeks. His squad of fighters looked like they had been through hell, because they had. But they were still fighting. The Valorians had 20,000 troops occupying Mars City. Nick had 300 fighters. On paper, it was hopeless. But Nick had learned something important about the Valorians. They followed patterns. They liked order and schedules. They were predictable. Humans were not predictable. "The supply convoy leaves at 1400 hours, Nick said to his team. "Same route as always. They'll have 50 guards. We hit them at the narrow pass where they can't spread out. Bobby, you and your team hit them from the front. Carol, take your group and hit them from behind. I'll be in the middle with the explosives." Lieutenant Bobby Green nodded. He was 19 years old and had been a college student before the war. Now, he was one of the best fighters Nick had. What if they bring air support this time? Quote, "Then we improvise," Nick said. "We always improvise." The attack went perfectly until it didn't. The convoy was hit hard. 3 Valorian supply trucks exploded. Guards scattered in confusion. But then Valorian aircraft showed up 5 minutes early. They must have changed their schedule. "Everybody down," Nick shouted. He grabbed his radio. "Carol, we need covering fire now." Carol Martinez and her team were supposed to be in the rear. But when she saw the Valorian aircraft coming, she made a decision. Her team had 2 old anti-aircraft missiles. They were supposed to save them for an emergency. This was an emergency. Both missiles fired. One missed. One hit a Valorian aircraft dead center. The aircraft exploded and crashed into a building. The building collapsed, blocking the street and trapping half the Valorian guards. Nick's team grabbed what supplies they could and disappeared into the ruins of the city. The Valorians tried to follow but lost them within minutes. Humans knew every tunnel, every hidden path, every secret way through the destroyed city. The Valorians only knew the main streets. It happened again and again. Small human teams struck Valorian positions and vanished. Supplies were destroyed. Equipment was sabotaged. Valorian soldiers started getting nervous. They couldn't sleep because humans attacked at night. They couldn't relax because humans attacked during meals. They couldn't trust anything because humans booby-trapped everything. Commander Zethron received daily reports of these attacks. They were losing more supplies to these guerrilla fighters than they were to the main human military. He sent more troops. The attacks continued. He set up better security. The humans found ways around it. "How many insurgents are on Mars?" he asked his intelligence officer. "We estimate about 500, Commander." 500 fighters are tying down 20,000 of our troops? "Yes, Commander." "They hide among the civilians. When we search for them, they blend in. When we stop searching, they attack again." Zethron made a decision he would regret. If the civilians are hiding them, then the civilians are enemies too. Make an example. Choose one district and level it. Show them what happens when they help the insurgents. The Valorians destroyed Section 7 of Mars City. 3,000 civilians lived there. Most of them had nothing to do with the resistance. They were just trying to survive. The Valorians didn't care. They wanted to send a message. They sent a message, but not the one they intended. Nick stood on a hill overlooking the ruins of Section 7. Smoke still rose from the destroyed buildings. Bodies were still being pulled from the rubble. He had known people in that district. Friends, families, children. Behind him, Bobby spoke quietly. They killed civilians. On purpose. I know, Nick said. So what do we do? Nick turned to look at his squad. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. He saw the anger in their eyes. The hatred. Good. They would need that. We make them pay, Nick said. We stop playing nice. No more just hitting supply convoys. We start hitting them where it hurts. Power plants. Water treatment. Command centers. If they want to kill civilians, then we stop treating this like a police action. This is war now. Real war. Carol stepped forward. Some of us might die. Probably, Nick agreed. Maybe all of us. But we'll take a lot of them with us. And maybe, just maybe, we'll make them regret ever coming to our planet. The resistance changed after Section 7. Before, they had been careful, strategic. Now, they were ruthless. A Valorian commander would go to sleep in his quarters and never wake up because someone had poisoned his air supply. A Valorian patrol would turn a corner and walk into a building rigged to explode. A Valorian supply dump would be fine one moment and on fire the next. The Valorians sent more troops. It didn't help. For every resistance fighter they killed, 2 more took their place. The people of Mars City stopped cooperating with the Valorians entirely. They provided food and shelter to the fighters. They passed information about Valorian movements. They became part of the resistance. Back on Earth, the war had changed too. Every human became a potential soldier. Factories ran day and night building weapons. Scientists worked on new technologies. Even children helped by running messages and spotting Valorian scouts. Lieutenant Commander Alex Price commanded one of the last submarines. His vessel, the Vengeance, operated from hidden bases deep in Earth's oceans. The Valorians controlled the sky and space, but they didn't control the water. Alex's submarine was old and damaged. Half the systems didn't work right. They had to manually pump water just to dive. The crew fixed things with duct tape and prayers. But they kept fighting. Sonar contact, called out the operator, Jenny Brooks. Looks like a Valorian command ship in low orbit. Can we reach it? Alex asked. His executive officer, Paul Henderson, checked the numbers. Maybe. But we'd have to surface and fire our missiles in atmosphere. We've never tested that. The heat might destroy the missiles before they reach orbit. And the Valorians would see us. They'd kill us before we could dive again. So, you're saying it's dangerous? I'm saying it's suicide, sir. Alex looked around at his crew. They were all young. Too young to die. But they were also volunteers. Every one of them had chosen to be here. They could have stayed on land where it was safer. They chose to fight. Here's what we're going to do, Alex said. I'm going to give everyone a choice. We can stay down here and be safe. Or we can try to take out that command ship. If we succeed, we'll save thousands of lives. If we fail, we die. I won't order anyone to come with me. But I'm going up there. Who's with me? Every hand went up. Jenny spoke for all of them. We didn't join the Navy to hide, sir. Let's give them hell. The Vengeance surfaced 5 miles off the coast. The old submarine shuddered as it broke through the waves. Immediately, alarms sounded. The Valorians had detected them. Fire all missiles, Alex ordered. Everything we've got. 6 missiles launched. 3 exploded from the heat before leaving the atmosphere. 2 were shot down by Valorian defenses. 1 got through. Just 1. But 1 was enough. The missile hit the Valorian command ship's reactor. The explosion could be seen from the ground. The massive alien ship broke apart and fell into the ocean. The Vengeance didn't survive. Valorian aircraft hit it 30 seconds after the missiles launched. The submarine broke in half and began to sink. Alex managed to get most of his crew into escape pods before the sub went down. He went down with his ship, as captains do, but the crew survived. They were picked up by a human rescue team. Jenny Brooks became a captain herself later. She never forgot what Alex taught her. Sometimes, you have to risk everything. Sometimes the only way to win is to fight like you're already dead. The Valorian High Command held an emergency meeting. They had now lost 40 ships to this one primitive planet. 40 ships. That was more than they had lost in the previous 50 years of conquest combined. We need to commit the entire fleet, one admiral argued. Destroy Earth completely. Make an example of them. And what message does that send? A doctor. Vextar was the leading xenopsychologist in the Valorian Empire. She had studied 60 different species. She understood their cultures, their fears, their motivations. When the High Command asked her to study humanity, she thought it would be simple. She was wrong. Vextar sat in her research center aboard the flagship, surrounded by screens showing human history. Battle after battle, war after war, century after century of constant conflict. It was overwhelming and disturbing. This makes no sense, she said to her assistant. Most species fight over resources or territory. But humans fought over ideas, over religions, over which economic system was better. They fought wars where both sides were humans, killing each other by the millions, and then stopped and became allies a generation later. She pulled up a file on something called World War II. 60 million humans died in that war. The destruction was unimaginable. And it had happened less than 200 years ago. Look at this, Vextar said. After World War II ended, the victorious humans helped rebuild the nations they defeated. They became friends with their former enemies. What kind of species does that? Odor. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. What really scared Vextar was how humans treated war itself. They had museums dedicated to wars. They made movies about wars. They taught their children about great battles and military heroes. War wasn't something shameful to humans. It was part of their identity. She found records of human literature. They had thousands of books about war, poetry about soldiers, songs about battles. They even had rules about war, something they called the Geneva Conventions, rules about how to fight. As if war could be civilized, they romanticize conflict. Vextar wrote in her report. They honor warriors above almost all other professions. Their greatest heroes are not scientists or artists or peacemakers. They are soldiers who fought impossible battles. They teach their children stories about people who refuse to surrender, even when defeat was certain. She found a human concept called going down fighting. It meant choosing to die in combat, rather than surrender or retreat. Most species would call that stupidity. Humans called it honor. Vextar compiled her findings and presented them to Commander Zethron. He listened carefully, his expression growing more troubled with each piece of information. So you're saying they're biologically programmed for war? Zethron asked. Not exactly, Vextar replied. But their entire culture is built around conflict. Every major advancement in their civilization came during or after wars. Their technology jumps forward fastest when they're fighting. Their economies grow when they have a common enemy. They unite, as a species, only when threatened. Then we gave them exactly what they needed, Zethron said quietly. A common enemy. Yes, Commander. Before we arrived, humans were divided into hundreds of nations. They argued and competed with each other. Now they're united. Every human on that planet is working together to fight us. Zethron pulled up the casualty reports. 40% of the Valorian military had been committed to this one system. They had lost thousands of warriors, dozens of ships, and still, the humans fought. Can we defeat them? He asked. Vextar paused before answering. Yes, we can kill them all. We have the firepower to destroy their entire planet. But can we make them surrender? She shook her head. I don't think so. Commander, I've studied their history. They've fought wars that lasted decades. Wars that destroyed entire continents. They poisoned their own planet with nuclear weapons and kept fighting. They don't know how to quit. On Earth, Captain Tony Martinez had been given a new assignment. He now commanded a small team operating in the ruins of Los Angeles. The Valorians had bombed the city 3 months ago. Most of it was destroyed. But humans still lived in the ruins, and they still fought. Tony's team had 8 people. Engineer Pete Collins, who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. Medic Linda Hayes, who had saved dozens of lives with limited supplies. Scout Ryan Cooper, who could move through the city without being seen. And 5 others. All good people. All ready to die, if necessary. Their mission was simple. The Valorians had established a command post in what used to be downtown. Tony's team needed to destroy it. They had one small explosive device. Against a fortified Valorian base, it wasn't much. But it was all they had. The base has 50 guards, Ryan reported. Walls, automated defenses, the works. No way we're getting inside. Then we don't go inside, Tony said. We bring them outside. Pete looked confused. How do we do that? We give them something they can't ignore. We attack something else nearby. Something important. They'll send troops to respond. When the base is less defended, we hit it. It was a simple plan. Probably wouldn't work, but it was better than nothing. They chose a Valorian supply depot 2 miles from the command post. At midnight, Ryan and 2 others attacked the depot with homemade explosives and rifles. The Valorians responded immediately, sending 30 guards from the command post. That left 20 guards at the base. Still too many. But Tony didn't have time to wait for a better opportunity. He led the rest of his team toward the command post, through the ruins of the city. They moved in darkness, avoiding patrols, staying low. Linda almost died when she stepped on a piece of metal that made noise. A Valorian guard heard and came to investigate. Pete saved her by throwing a rock in the opposite direction. The guard went to check the noise. They kept moving. They reached the wall of the command post. Pete set up the explosive device. It wasn't big enough to destroy the whole base, but it might collapse one wall. Maybe take out some important equipment. Every little bit helped. Timer is set for 5 minutes, Pete whispered. We need to go now. They ran. Behind them, the explosive detonated. The blast was bigger than expected. Apparently, Pete had found some old military explosives and added them to the device. The wall collapsed. Alarms screamed. Valorian guards rushed to the breach. Tony's team got away clean. They watched from a safe distance as the Valorians tried to put out fires and secure the damaged base. It wasn't a major victory, but it was something. It proved humans were still fighting, still refusing to quit. The next morning, Admiral Lisa Chen received the report about the Los Angeles operation. It was one of hundreds of similar reports. Small teams hitting the Valorians everywhere. Nothing decisive. Nothing that would win the war. But constant pressure. Constant resistance. She was reading the reports when her aide, Gary Walsh, brought urgent news. Ma'am, we've intercepted Valorian communications. They're pulling back troops from Mars. Pulling back? According to the intercepts, they're having supply problems. Our resistance fighters on Mars have destroyed so many supplies that the Valorians can't maintain their forces there. They're consolidating. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. It was the first good news in weeks. What about their fleet? Still in orbit, still strong. But ma'am, there's something else. The intercepts suggest the Valorians are arguing among themselves. Some want to commit more forces. Others want to pull out entirely. They're losing morale, Lisa said. They thought this would be easy. Now they're stuck in a war they can't win quickly. Can we win, ma'am? Lisa looked at the tactical display showing Earth, scarred, damaged, but still fighting. I don't know if we can win, but I know we won't lose. There's a difference. Losing means giving up. We're not going to do that. Meanwhile, on the moon colony of Europa, Lieutenant Jenny Brooks was leading a desperate defense. The Valorians had launched a major assault on the mining facilities. 300 human defenders against 2,000 Valorian troops. Jenny's squad held a key junction. If they lost this position, the Valorians would control the entire colony. They had been fighting for 2 days straight. No sleep. Barely any food. Ammunition running low. How many magazines do we have left? Jenny asked her sergeant. Bill Tucker. Maybe 50 rounds per person, ma'am. That's not enough. No, ma'am. It's not. Jenny looked at her squad. 23 people. Young and old. Men and women. All exhausted. All scared. But none of them suggested retreating. All right, listen up, Jenny said. When we run out of ammo, we switch to hand tools. There are mining lasers in the storage room, cutting torches, even pickaxes. If they want this colony, they're going to have to take it from our cold, dead hands. Bill laughed. It was a tired, desperate laugh. You really know how to motivate people, ma'am. I learned from the best, Jenny said, thinking of Alex Price and the Vengeance. He had taught her that sometimes you fight not because you think you can win, but because it's the right thing to do. The Valorians attacked again at dawn. The human defenders fired until their weapons clicked empty. Then they grabbed tools and fought hand to hand. It was brutal and desperate. Jenny herself took down 2 Valorian soldiers with a cutting torch before she was wounded. When the Valorians finally overran the position, they found Jenny unconscious but alive. They also found something that disturbed them. Every human defender had fought to the last. Not one had surrendered. Not one had run away. Even when wounded and disarmed, they kept fighting with their bare hands. The Valorian officer who captured Jenny was named Krelvar. He looked at the wounded human woman and felt something he had never felt before in combat. Respect and fear. Because if this is how humans fought when they were losing, what would they be like if they ever gained the upper hand? The war had lasted 2 years. 2 long years of constant fighting. Earth was scarred and damaged. Entire cities lay in ruins. 40 million humans were dead. But Earth still fought, still refused to surrender. Commander Zethron stood before the Valorian High Council. He had been summoned back to the homeworld to explain why one small planet was costing the Empire so much. The council chamber was massive and intimidating. 50 of the most powerful Valorians in the galaxy sat in judgment. You have lost 40% of our military strength fighting primitives, the High Counselor said. His voice was cold with anger. Explain yourself. Wid. Zethron had prepared for this moment. He pulled up displays, showing battle footage. Human ships ramming Valorian vessels. Human soldiers fighting with broken weapons. Human civilians building bombs in their homes. They are not primitives, Zethron said. They are something we have never encountered before. A species that has evolved through constant warfare. Every advancement they made came through conflict. Fighting is not just something they do. It is what they are. Then we commit more forces, another counselor said. Crush them completely. We can do that, Zethron agreed. We can destroy Earth, kill every human. But it will cost us everything. We'll have to commit our entire fleet. The war will last years. And other species under our control are watching. They see us struggling. If we appear weak, they will rebel. The council went silent. This was the truth they didn't want to hear. The Valorian Empire, controlled 31 different species across hundreds of worlds. Those species obeyed because they believed the Valorians were unbeatable. But humans were proving that wrong. Dr. Vex's Tar stepped forward. She had been brought to explain her findings. I have studied human history extensively. They have fought wars lasting decades. Wars that destroyed entire continents. They rebuilt and fought again. They poisoned their own planet with nuclear weapons, and it didn't stop them. If we continue this war, we will win. But the cost will destroy our empire. Are you suggesting we surrender to primitives? A counselor asked with disgust. I'm suggesting we recognize reality. Vextar said. Humans don't fight like other species. They don't calculate odds. They don't preserve their strength. They fight with complete commitment, willing to die to the last person. The question isn't whether we can defeat them. The question is whether we can afford to. The High Counselor looked at the casualty reports, the economic costs, the political implications. He was old and had led the Empire for 50 years. He had never lost a war, but he was wise enough to know when to stop fighting. What do you propose? He asked Zethron. Peace, Zethron said simply. We withdraw from the Sol system. We offer terms. We give them technology and support in exchange for a non-aggression pact. They'll see it as weakness. They'll see it as survival. Both theirs and ours. Because if we keep fighting, eventually, they'll develop better weapons, better ships, and when that happens, they won't just defend themselves. They'll come for us. Better to make peace now, while we can still negotiate from strength. Back on Earth, Admiral Lisa Chen received an unexpected message. The Valorians wanted to talk. They were offering peace negotiations. She read the message 3 times, not believing it. Is this a trick? She asked Gary Walsh. Intelligence doesn't think so, ma'am. The Valorians have been pulling back forces all week. They're consolidating their positions. It looks like they're serious. Lisa felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. Maybe. Just maybe. Humanity would survive this. But she was also suspicious. The Valorians were winning. They controlled Mars and the outer colonies. They had more ships, better technology, larger forces. Why would they offer peace? Set up the meeting, she said, but keep our fleet on alert. If this is a trap, we'll fight. The negotiations took place on a neutral space station in the asteroid belt. Lisa Chen led the human delegation. Commander Zethron led the Valorian side. They met in a simple room with a table between them. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. 2 warriors who had tried to kill each other for 2 years, now talking instead of fighting. Why are you offering peace? Lisa asked. She didn't bother with diplomatic pleasantries. She wanted answers. Because continuing the war benefits neither of us, Zethron replied. We can defeat you eventually, but it will cost more than Earth is worth, and you will never surrender. Will you? No, Lisa said simply. We'll fight until every human is dead. That's not a threat. It's just a fact. Zethron nodded. He had expected this answer. Then we make peace. We withdraw from your system. We provide technology transfers, including faster-than-light travel. We establish trade relations. In exchange, you agree not to attack Valorian territory. That's very generous, Lisa said. What's the real reason? Zethron decided to be honest. We're afraid of you. Not now, but in the future. You have shown us what humans are capable of. You fight like you're already dead, like you have nothing to lose. If we give you time to develop, if you reach our level of technology, what will you be? We're making peace now because in 100 years, you might be too powerful to stop. Lisa sat back in her chair. It was the most honest thing any alien had said to her, and it made sense. The Valorians were cutting their losses while they could. I need to consult with Earth Command, she said. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. There were arguments and disagreements. Some humans wanted to keep fighting, to push the Valorians out completely. But most realized this was the best chance for peace they would get. The Treaty of Titan was signed on a cold morning in March. Earth would remain independent. The Valorians would provide advanced technology. Both sides would establish an embassy. Trade would be allowed. And most importantly, both sides agreed to help each other if attacked by outside forces. That last part was Zethron's idea. If humans were going to be warriors, better they fight alongside the Valorians than against them. When Lisa returned to Earth, she expected celebrations. Instead, she found quiet determination. People were glad the war was over. But they hadn't forgotten the 40 million dead, the destroyed cities, the years of suffering. President Angela Hart spoke at the memorial service. A massive wall had been built, listing every name of every person who died in the war. It stretched for miles. "We won," Angela said, "not because we were stronger, not because we were smarter. We won because we refused to lose. Because 40 million people gave everything so the rest of us could be free." They fought, knowing they would probably die. They fought anyway. That is what makes us human. That is what will always make us human. In the crowd, Captain Tony Martinez stood with his team. Pete Collins had lost an arm in the war. Linda Hayes walked with a limp. Ryan Cooper had scars across his face. But they were alive. They had survived. "Do you think it's really over?" Pete asked. "The war with the Valorians is over," Tony said. "But there's a big galaxy out there. Sooner or later, we'll be fighting again. It's what we do." Linda smiled sadly. "I just hope next time we're fighting for someone else instead of defending ourselves." "That's a nice thought," Tony agreed. On Mars, Colonel Nick Henderson watched the last Valorian troops leave. The occupation was over. The colony was free. But the city was in ruins. Thousands were dead. It would take decades to rebuild. Bobby Green stood next to him. The young man who had been a college student 2 years ago was now a hardened veteran. "What do we do now, sir?" "We rebuild," Nick said. "We honor the dead. We get stronger. And we make sure this never happens again." "You think they'll come back?" "Maybe. Maybe not. But if they do, we'll be ready." Commander Zethron returned to the Valorian homeworld as a hero and a failure. A hero because he had ended a costly war. A failure because he hadn't achieved victory. The High Council gave him a new assignment. Study humanity. Learn from them. Understand them. Because everyone knew this wasn't really over. This was just a pause. Humanity would grow stronger. They would spread across the galaxy. And when they did, they would bring their fighting spirit with them. The Valorian Empire had made a calculation. It was cheaper to have humans as allies than enemies. Time would tell if they were right. Dr. Vextar continued her research on human behavior. She published a paper that became required reading at the Valorian War College. It was titled, "The Species That Doesn't Know When to Quit: Understanding Human Combat Psychology." The paper's conclusion was simple and tariff. 20 years passed. 20 years since the Treaty of Titan. 20 years of peace and growth. Earth had rebuilt its cities and expanded into space. Humans now had colonies on dozens of worlds. They had faster-than-light travel thanks to Valorian technology. They had joined the galactic community. But humans were still humans. They still carried that fighting spirit in their blood. Commander Kate Barnes stood on the bridge of the Earth Fleet carrier Indomitable. She had been a young lieutenant during the Valorian War. Now she commanded one of humanity's most powerful warships. Her crew numbered 3,000. Her ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. "Ma'am, we're receiving a distress call from Valorian space," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Chris Murphy. "Multiple signals." "Sounds bad." Kate pulled up the tactical display. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Nexus Swarm. She had heard about them in intelligence briefings. A species that consumed entire worlds. No negotiation. No mercy. Just destruction. and they were attacking the Valorians. "How many Valorian ships are in the area?" Kate asked. "Looks like 30 ships, ma'am. Against over 100 swarm vessels. They're getting torn apart." Kate made a decision without hesitation. Set course for Valorian space. Maximum speed. Send a fleet-wide message. We're going to help them. "Ma'am, we don't have authorization from Earth Command," Chris said carefully. "Then get it. But we're not waiting. Those are our allies. We signed a treaty. We help each other when attacked. It's time to honor that treaty." Across human space, other commanders made similar decisions. The human fleet mobilized faster than anyone thought possible. 12 carrier groups. Over 200 ships. They dropped everything and headed for Valorian territory. Admiral Lisa Chen, now retired but called back to service, took overall command. She stood in the war room at Earth Command, watching the tactical displays. Her hair was gray now. She moved slower than she used to. But her mind was still sharp. "How long until our fleet reaches the Valorians?" she asked. 4 hours, ma'am," Gary Walsh replied. He was also older now, a full general, but still serving with Lisa. "But the Valorians are barely holding. They might not last 4 hours. Then they'll have to hold," Lisa said. "Send them a message. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold the line for 4 more hours." In Valorian space, Commander Zethron received the message. He was old now. One of the few veterans of the human war, still alive. When he saw that humans were coming to help, he felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, gratitude, and a strange sort of pride. "All ships, hold your positions," Zethron ordered. "Human reinforcements are 4 hours away. We just need to survive until then." His tactical officer looked at the display. "Sir, we've lost 15 ships already. 4 hours. Might as well be forever." "Then we hold for forever," Zethron said. "The humans taught us something during our war. They taught us that sometimes you fight not because you think you can win, but because giving up is worse than dying. Today, we learn that lesson." The Valorian ships formed a defensive formation. They had better shields and weapons than the swarm, but the swarm had numbers. For every swarm ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Valorians were slowly being overwhelmed. Then the humans arrived. Kate watched as the Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace right in the middle of the battle. All around her, human ships appeared. Over 200 vessels, all ready to fight. The swarm had never encountered humans before. They were about to learn. "All ships, weapons free," Kate ordered. "Target the swarm vessels attacking Valorian ships. Show them what Earth is made of." The human fleet attacked with a fury that shocked both the swarm and the Valorians. Human ships didn't carefully position themselves for optimal firing angles. They dove straight into the enemy formation, guns blazing. Missiles streaked through space. Energy weapons lit up the darkness. Captain Danny Rogers, now an old veteran flying one last mission, commanded a destroyer squadron. His ships moved like dancers, weaving between swarm vessels, firing constantly. When his weapons overheated, he used his ship to ram a swarm cruiser. Both ships exploded, but Danny's crew had already evacuated to escape pods. Lieutenant Commander Jenny Brooks, fully recovered from her wounds at Europa, led a fighter squadron off the Indomitable. Her fighters swarmed around larger swarm vessels like angry bees, targeting weak points, creating opportunities for the big ships to finish them off. Colonel Tony Martinez, no longer young but still fighting, commanded a marine assault team. When one swarm ship was damaged and drifting, Tony's team boarded it. They fought through the alien vessel, room by room, until they reached the reactor and set it to explode. They barely got off before the ship detonated. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the swarm had been driven back. They left behind 70 destroyed vessels. The humans had lost 35 ships. The Valorians had lost 20 more, but they had won. Zethron's ship was heavily damaged but still functional. He received a communication request from the Indomitable. When Kate Barnes appeared on his screen, Zethron felt like he was looking at a younger version of Admiral Lisa Chen. The same determination, the same fire in the eyes. "Commander Zethron," Kate said, "your territory is secure. The swarm is retreating. We'll maintain a presence here until you can rebuild your defensive fleet." "Thank you, Commander Barnes," Zethron replied. "You didn't have to come, but I'm grateful you did." "Yes, we did have to come," Kate said. "We have a treaty. More than that, we have history. You taught us about the galaxy. We owe you for that. Besides, the swarm is everyone's enemy. Better we fight them together." After the battle, a joint memorial service was held for the fallen. Human and Valorian dead were honored together. Admiral Lisa Chen stood next to the High Counselor of the Valorian Empire. They were both old now, both scarred by war, both tired of fighting, but both still standing. "Your people saved us," the High Counselor said. "We owe you a debt we can never repay." "You gave us the stars," Lisa replied. "I'd say we're even. Besides, this is what humans do. We fight. We protect. Sometimes, we protect even our former enemies. I was one of the counselors who voted to invade Earth," the High Counselor admitted. "It was the worst decision I ever made. And also, somehow, the best, because it forced us to meet you, to understand you, to become your allies instead of your conquerors. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to," Lisa said. "Now we face the galaxy together." Back on Earth, people celebrated the victory. But there was also sadness. 35 ships lost. Over 50,000 casualties. The price of war never changed. People still died. Families still mourned. President Kevin Foster addressed the nation. "Today we proved something important. We proved that humanity has not lost its spirit. 20 years of peace didn't make us soft. We're still the same species that fought the Valorians to a standstill. Still the same species that refuses to give up. But now we use that strength to protect others, not just ourselves." Dr. Vex Tar, now very old, published a new paper updating her research on humans. It was titled, "The Species That Became Protectors: How Human Combat Psychology Benefits the Galaxy." The paper explained how humanity's refusal to quit, their willingness to fight impossible battles, their protective instincts toward allies, made them valuable members of the galactic community. Other species were stronger or smarter or more advanced. But no other species fought like humans. No other species would charge into battle against overwhelming odds to save their friends. "Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy," Vextar wrote. "They are not the smartest or most advanced, but they may be the most dangerous to their enemies and the most loyal to their friends. They fight with a passion that borders on insanity. They never surrender. They never give up. And most importantly, they never abandon their allies. In a galaxy full of threats, these traits make them invaluable." The Nexus swarm returned 3 years later. This time they were ready for humans. They brought 3 times as many ships. They thought overwhelming force would work. They were wrong. The combined human-Valorian fleet met them at the border. 30 other species joined the fight, all inspired by humanity's example. The battle was fierce and costly, but the swarm was defeated and driven back to their own territory. After that battle, something changed in the galaxy. Species that had fought each other for centuries started working together. They formed a defensive alliance. Humans weren't the leaders of this alliance, but they were its heart. Because everyone knew that if you were humanity's ally, humans would fight for you like you were one of their own. Kate Barnes, now an admiral herself, stood at a ceremony honoring the alliance. Representatives from 50 different species were present. She gave a short speech. "My people have a saying," Kate told the crowd. "No one gets left behind. It means we protect each other. We fight for each other. We don't abandon our friends no matter how bad things get. 20 years ago, we fought the Valorians because they tried to conquer us. Today we fight alongside them because they're our friends. That's what humans do. We don't forget our enemies, but we also don't forget our friends. And we will fight to our last breath to protect both our home and yours. The crowd applauded. But what they didn't say was what many were thinking. They were glad humans were on their side. Because the alternative, having humans as enemies, was too terrifying to imagine. Commander Zethron, now retired and writing his memoirs, included a chapter about humanity. He called it, "The Species That Changed Everything." Before humans, he wrote, the galaxy was ruled by logic and calculation. Wars were fought over resources and territory. Alliances were based on mutual benefit. Everything was transactional. Then humans arrived and showed us something different. They showed us that some things are worth fighting for, even when the math says you'll lose. They showed us that loyalty matters, that courage matters, that sometimes the right choice isn't the smart choice. I invaded Earth expecting to add another primitive species to our empire. Instead, I discovered a species that would reshape the entire galaxy. Not through conquest, but through example. Humans taught us that we could be more than calculators weighing costs and benefits. We could be warriors fighting for something we believe in. Do I regret invading Earth? Yes. 40,000 Valorian warriors died in that war. But do I regret that humans are now part of the galactic community? No. Because in the end, humans didn't just fight for Earth. They fought for the idea that some things are worth dying for. And that idea changed all of us. On Earth, in a small cemetery in what used to be Los Angeles, there was a simple gravestone. It read, Commander Jake Morrison. He refused to surrender. Next to it were thousands of other graves, 40 million people who died defending Earth. Every year, on the anniversary of the war's end, people visited these graves. They remembered the sacrifice. They told their children the stories. They made sure no one forgot what it cost to be free. And every year, Valorian dignitaries came to pay their respects. Because they understood now. They understood that humans didn't fight out of hatred or anger. They fought because they believed in something. And that belief, that stubborn refusal to give up, was what made humans special. The galaxy had discovered something important about humanity. Once humans start fighting, they don't know how to stop. But they also discovered something else. When humans fight for you, when they're on your side, there's no force in the universe that can defeat you. Because humans don't just fight to win. They fight to protect. They fight for their friends. They fight for what's right. And they never, ever give up. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology or ships, but the simple, stubborn belief that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost. And in a galaxy full of threats and dangers, that belief was the most powerful weapon of all. Ying. Humans were persistence hunters. They chased prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They applied this same logic to warfare. They would keep fighting, keep pushing, keep trying until either they won or they died. There was no middle ground. Other species in the galaxy would learn this lesson eventually. Some would learn by becoming humanity's allies. Others would learn the hard way, by fighting humans and discovering they had made a terrible mistake. But that was in the future. For now, Earth had peace. The dead were mourned, the living rebuilt, and everyone prepared for whatever came next. Because if there was one thing humans knew, it was that there would always be a next fight, and when it came, they would be ready. Commander Zethron received Jenny as a prisoner. He wanted to understand. He needed to understand. So he asked her the same question he had asked before. Why do you keep fighting? You must know you cannot win. Jenny looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death. Because you're still here. As long as you're here, we'll fight. You can kill us all. Every last human. But we will never stop. Never surrender. That's what makes us human. Zethron finally understood. And understanding terrified him. Another admiral countered. That one small world fought us so hard we had to destroy it? That will encourage rebellion in every system we control. Ack, they argued for hours. But the truth was simple and terrifying. The Valorians were losing. Not in terms of territory or ships. They were losing in terms of will. Their soldiers were afraid. Their commanders were frustrated. Their people back home were questioning why they were fighting this war at all. Humans, meanwhile, showed no signs of stopping. Every defeat made them fight harder. Every loss made them more determined. The Valorians were beginning to realize they might have made a terrible mistake. Lisa smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had already accepted their fate and decided to fight anyway. The math said, we couldn't hurt them at all, but we destroyed 8 of their ships. The math doesn't know everything. Sometimes you have to ignore the math and just fight. Around the world, factories worked day and night. Every nation contributed. Old enemies worked together. The entire human race united for the first time in history, not because they thought they could win, but because surrender wasn't an option they could accept. The Valorians would learn that humans had one great weakness and one great strength. The weakness was that humans couldn't work together unless they faced a common enemy. The strength was that when they did face a common enemy, nothing could stop them, not even certain death. P. Cumming thought it was a bluff. No commander would sacrifice their ship like that. It made no sense. It wasn't logical. They learned too late that humans don't always do what makes sense. Sometimes, humans do what feels right. And right now, fighting back felt right. The collision was massive. Both ships exploded. The shockwave knocked 2 other Valorian vessels off course. Debris scattered in all directions. There were no survivors. But across the battlefield, other human commanders saw what Jake had done. And they understood. If they were going to die anyway, they could at least take the enemy with them. The battle for Earth had begun. And the Valorians were about to learn something terrifying about humanity. Humans don't fight like other species. Humans fight like they have nothing to lose. Because in that moment, they believed they didn't.